They laughed when the two Native American women walked into the sniper course wearing traditional beaded bracelets under their tactical gear. They stopped laughing when both targets dropped before the instructors could even start the timer. Before we continue, comment below what city or country you're watching this video from. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly before Coronado Naval Base, where the most elite marksmen in the world trained under conditions designed to break even the strongest minds. It was here that two sisters would rewrite everything the Navy SEALs thought they knew about precision, patience, and the ancient art of the hunt. Maya Whitefeather was 29 years old when she first held her grandfather's hunting rifle on the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming. While other children played video games, she learned to read the wind by watching grass bend, to predict animal movement by studying broken twigs, and to remain motionless for hours while waiting for the perfect moment. Her grandfather, a Marine Corps veteran who served in Vietnam, taught her that shooting was never about the gun. It was about becoming part of the landscape, invisible and patient as stone itself. Her younger sister, Kiona, was 26 and possessed a gift that elders called the seeing eye, an almost supernatural ability to calculate distance, wind drift, and timing without instruments. Where Maya was contemplative and spiritual in her approach, Kiona was mathematical and instinctive, her mind processing angles and trajectories faster than most computers. Together, they represented two halves of the same ancient warrior tradition that their people had carried for thousands of years. Growing up on the reservation meant understanding poverty, systemic neglect, and the weight of expectations that came from being young Native women in modern America. Their father had died in a construction accident when Maya was 15, leaving their mother to raise 4 children alone on a salary that barely covered food. The military recruiter who visited their high school talked about honor, purpose, and opportunity. But what Maya heard was a chance to prove that the skills her grandfather taught her had value beyond the reservation boundaries. She enlisted in the Army at 18, spending 6 years as a designated marksman before applying to the Navy's Special Warfare Training Pipeline. When her application was accepted, her mother cried, not from joy, but from fear of losing another family member to a world that had never shown their people much mercy. Kiona followed her sister's path 3 years later, driven by the same fire to transcend the limitations that geography and circumstance had tried to impose on their lives. The SEAL Sniper training course at Coronado was legendary for its brutality. Of the 40 candidates who started, fewer than 10 would graduate. The curriculum demanded perfection under impossible conditions, shooting while exhausted, dehydrated, and pushed beyond normal human endurance. Instructors used psychological warfare as effectively as they taught ballistics, constantly reminding candidates that failure was always one breath away. When Maya and Kiona arrived for the first day of training, they were the only women in a class of 38 men. Some of the looks they received were curious, others skeptical, and a few openly hostile. The lead instructor, a hardened SEAL Master Chief named Garrett Munson, had spent 23 years in special operations and had trained hundreds of snipers. He took one look at the two Native American women and made no effort to hide his doubt. "This isn't a diversity initiative," he announced to the entire class that first morning. "This is about life and death. If you can't make the shot when your teammates are counting on you, people die. I don't care what your story is or where you came from, only whether you can perform when everything is on the line." His eyes lingered on Maya and Kiona longer than necessary, making his skepticism clear without saying another word. Several male candidates smirked, already assuming the sisters would wash out before the end of the first week. What none of them understood was that Maya and Kiona had been preparing for this moment their entire lives, long before they ever wore a uniform. The first phase of training focused on marksmanship fundamentals: breathing control, trigger discipline, position consistency, and the mental fortitude to make split-second decisions under stress. While most candidates struggled to adapt to the rigorous standards, Maya moved through the exercises with an almost meditative calm. Her grandfather's lessons echoed in her mind with each shot. Breathe with the earth, not against it. The rifle is simply an extension of your intention. Kiona approached the technical aspects differently, treating each shooting scenario like a complex equation that needed solving. She calculated windage adjustments in her head faster than others could use their instruments, compensated for temperature and humidity without thinking, and developed an uncanny ability to predict how her rounds would behave before she ever touched the trigger. The sisters didn't just meet the standards, they exceeded them with a consistency that began to unsettle the instructors. By the third week, whispers started circulating through the training cadre. The White Feather sisters were outperforming candidates with years more experience. During a night shooting exercise that typically resulted in multiple failures, both women achieved perfect scores while others struggled to even locate their targets in the darkness. Master Chief Munson watched through his spotting scope with growing disbelief, unwilling to accept what his own eyes were showing him. "Luck," he muttered to his assistant instructor. "Give them time. The pressure will break them like it breaks everyone else." But the pressure didn't break them. If anything, it seemed to sharpen their focus. During a grueling exercise where candidates had to maintain shooting positions for 6 hours without moving while instructors used bullhorns, smoke grenades, and deliberate distractions to break their concentration, Maya entered a state of stillness so profound that one instructor actually checked to make sure she was still breathing. Kiona, lying 50 meters away, seemed to transform into part of the sand itself, her breathing so controlled and shallow that she appeared almost lifeless. When the exercise ended and both women delivered perfect shots on their targets, several candidates openly protested to Munson, claiming the sisters must have received special treatment or advanced knowledge of the course requirements. The accusation stung not because it held any truth, but because it revealed exactly what Maya and Kiona had expected all along: that excellence from women who looked like them would always be questioned, diminished, or attributed to anything except their actual skill. Munson decided to settle the matter once and for all with an impromptu challenge that fell outside the normal curriculum. He called the entire class together on the range one scorching afternoon when the heat made the air shimmer and distorted all visual references. The conditions were nearly impossible for precision shooting. "I'm going to give you all a scenario," Munson announced, his voice carrying across the assembled candidates. "Hostage rescue situation. 6 targets at varying distances between 400 and 800 meters. You have 70 seconds to neutralize all 6 threats without hitting the hostages positioned between them. Most experienced SEAL snipers need at least 2 minutes for this drill. I want to see who among you can even come close." He looked directly at Maya and Kiona. "Since some people seem to think our standards have dropped, let's see what real performance looks like. White Feather sisters, you're up first." The challenge was deliberately designed to be impossible for candidates at their training level. 6 targets in 70 seconds required not just accuracy, but seamless coordination, instantaneous target acquisition, and the ability to transition between different shooting positions without losing precision. Even Master Chief Munson himself would struggle to complete the drill clean. Several candidates exchanged glances, some showing sympathy for the sisters, others barely concealing their satisfaction at what seemed like inevitable public failure. This was the moment when the outsiders would finally be exposed, when the narrative about special treatment would be confirmed, when things would return to normal. Maya and Kiona walked to the shooting line without speaking. They had developed their own silent communication over years of hunting together, a language of subtle gestures and shared understanding that required no words. As they checked their rifles and prepared their positions, something shifted in their demeanor. They were no longer 2 candidates being tested by skeptical instructors. They had become what their ancestors had always been: hunters moving with purpose, patience, and absolute clarity of intention. Master Chief Munson raised his stopwatch. "On my mark, 3, 2, 1, execute." The first shot broke the silence less than 2 seconds after the command. Maya had acquired the furthest target at 800 meters, compensating for wind drift and heat distortion in a heartbeat. The steel target rang out its confirmation before most observers even realized she had fired. Kiona's first round followed immediately, dropping a target at 450 meters that was partially obscured behind a hostage silhouette. A shot that required absolute precision to avoid hitting the non-combatant. What happened next would be analyzed and replayed countless times in the weeks that followed. The sisters moved through the drill with such fluid coordination that they seemed to be operating from a single consciousness. Maya transitioned to a kneeling position while Kiona adjusted prone, their movements creating a rhythm that allowed them to provide mutual spotting and cover different angles simultaneously. Third target down, 600 meters, moving left to right, Maya's shot leading the movement perfectly. Fourth target, 520 meters, Kiona threading her round through a 4-inch gap between two hostage positions. The cadre watching through spotting scopes began murmuring. This wasn't just good shooting. This was something they had never witnessed at this level of training. Fifth target, 730 meters, partially concealed, Maya's round striking exactly where the silhouette's center mass would be behind cover. Munson stared at his stopwatch. 43 seconds elapsed. 2 targets remaining. Even if they made the shots, they were running out of time. Kiona shifted her position slightly, adjusting for a brutal crosswind that had just picked up. The 6th target sat at the maximum distance, 800 meters, with a hostage positioned directly in front of it at 20 meters. The perspective made it appear as if shooter and non-combatant were merged into a single silhouette, a nightmare scenario that required absolute confidence in ballistic trajectory. She exhaled slowly, settling into that space between heartbeats where time seemed to expand. Her finger pressed the trigger with exactly 3.5 pounds of pressure, and the rifle spoke its truth. The round arced through superheated air, dropping precisely as physics and her calculations demanded, striking the threat target's head while the hostage remained untouched 20 meters forward. 59 seconds. Maya was already transitioning to the final target, but it wasn't where it had been. Someone in the cadre had activated a mechanism that moved the final threat to a new position, an additional challenge that hadn't been mentioned. The target was now at 650 meters, but moving erratically on a mechanical track designed to simulate unpredictable human movement. She had 11 seconds. Most snipers would need 30 seconds just to locate and track the target before attempting a shot. Maya closed her eyes for exactly 2 seconds, a technique her grandfather had taught her for seeing with something beyond physical vision. When her eyes opened, she had already calculated the pattern, predicted the movement, and identified the precise moment when the target would be most vulnerable. 7 seconds remaining. She acquired the target, led it through 3 oscillations to confirm the pattern, and waited for the exact moment that existed in her mind before it existed in reality. Her finger began pressing the trigger before the target even reached the optimal position, trusting in the certainty of her prediction. The rifle fired. The target rang. 68 seconds total. The silence that followed was more profound than the gunshots had been. Every candidate, every instructor, every observer stood frozen in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. 2 trainees had completed a drill that most fully qualified SEAL snipers couldn't finish clean, and they had done it with 2 seconds to spare. Master Chief Munson walked slowly to the shooting line, his expression unreadable. He examined both rifles as if looking for some hidden technology that might explain the impossible. He reviewed the spotting scope footage. He checked the target confirmations personally. Finally, he stood before Maya and Kiona, and for several long moments, he simply stared at them. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked quietly, the challenge and skepticism completely gone from his voice. Maya met his eyes with calm dignity. "My grandfather taught me on the Wind River Reservation, Master Chief. He said our people have been hunters for 10,000 years. We're not trying to break your traditions. We're honoring our own." Something shifted in Munson's face, and several instructors who had served with him for years would later say they had never seen that particular expression before. It wasn't quite respect. It was something deeper, more fundamental. It was recognition that he had witnessed excellence that came from a place he couldn't fully understand but couldn't deny. He stepped back and rendered a slow, deliberate salute, not to the candidates, but to the warriors standing before him. "From this moment forward," he announced loud enough for everyone to hear, "anyone who questions these women's place in this course will answer to me personally. They've earned more than their slot here. They've earned our respect." The remaining weeks of training brought new challenges, but the dynamics had fundamentally changed. Some candidates approached Maya and Kiona to learn from them, asking about their techniques and perspectives on shooting. Others maintained their distance, uncomfortable with having their assumptions so thoroughly dismantled. But no one laughed anymore, and no one questioned whether the sisters belonged. During the final evaluation, a comprehensive test that synthesized every skill learned throughout the course, Maya and Kiona both graduated in the top 5 of their class. The ceremony took place on a Friday afternoon with families present, and when Maya's mother attended wearing traditional Lakota dress, holding an eagle feather that had belonged to their grandfather, there wasn't a trace of mockery from anyone present, only acknowledgement that different paths could lead to the same warrior tradition. Master Chief Munson pulled the sisters aside after the ceremony, away from the crowds and cameras. His weathered face showed genuine humility as he spoke. "I owe you both an apology," he said simply. "I looked at you on day one and saw what I expected to see instead of who you actually were. You taught me something about assumptions, about heritage, and about what real warriors look like. That's a lesson I should have learned decades ago." Kiona smiled slightly. "You gave us the opportunity to prove ourselves, Master Chief. That's all we ever asked for." "Where are you headed next?" Munson asked. "SEAL Team 5, Maya answered. "Counterterrorism focus. We report in 3 weeks." He nodded slowly. "They're getting 2 exceptional operators. Make sure they know the standards you represent, not just as shooters, but as people who understand that excellence doesn't fit into narrow categories." The sisters deployed 7 times over the next 4 years, serving in classified operations across 3 continents. Their skills saved countless lives and completed missions that others considered impossible. But perhaps their greatest impact came from the young Native American women who saw their story and began to imagine possibilities that had seemed forever out of reach. Maya eventually left active duty to return to the Wind River Reservation, where she established a program teaching traditional hunting skills combined with modern survival training to at-risk youth. Kiona continued serving, becoming one of the lead instructors at the same sniper school that had once doubted her, ensuring that future generations would be evaluated on capability rather than appearance. The beaded bracelets they wore under their tactical gear, gifts from their grandfather made from materials gathered on sacred land, remained with them throughout their careers. The beads contained medicine from the earth, prayers from their ancestors, and the accumulated wisdom of a people who understood that true strength comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to apologize for it. Years later, a young Navajo woman would arrive at Coronado for SEAL training, nervous and uncertain about what awaited her. An instructor pulled her aside and told her about 2 sisters who had walked that path before her, who had turned doubt into opportunity and skepticism into respect. He told her about 6 impossible shots in 70 seconds, about heritage meeting excellence, about traditions that weren't in competition, but in conversation. "The White Feather Sisters proved something important," the instructor said. "Not that women can do this, or that Native Americans can do this, but that warriors come from everywhere. And the only question that matters is whether you have the heart to become who you're meant to be." The young woman nodded, adjusted her own traditional bracelet under her gear, and walked toward the range where her own journey would begin. Behind her, in the wind that crossed the Nevada desert, she could have sworn she heard drums, ancient rhythms that had never really stopped, that had simply been waiting for the right moment to be heard again. If you believe that heritage and honor know no boundaries, comment "Warrior Spirit" below. And before you go, share this story with someone who needs to remember that their background isn't a limitation, it's their greatest strength.